Well, believe it or not, we're back again. I know it's hard to believe. I never thought this thing would last. I know you didn't think this thing would last. None of us thought this thing would last. But for some strange reason, we keep coming together and keep putting this stupid podcast together. Hello, everybody. EDGYTIM here. We are literally sitting in 100 degrees in the shade today as we're recording this podcast. And of course, this is the third and Leng podcast. I'm not even sure how many years, Matt Leng, we've been doing this now. How many years?
I don't know. I've lost track. It's been so successful. It's so entertaining that we're befuddled with the amount of time and years that we've done this. So welcome back, everybody. We're back.
Glad to be back. Glad to have football back, as we were talking before we started recording. Baseball has not been good to me this year, so I'm more than happy to put baseball behind and to look ahead and to get to cover some football and just enjoy myself again. So I'm not the only one in that boat. I know there's several people in the Missouri and the St. Louis area that have not had a very good baseball year. And obviously some people up here in the Chicagoland area also. Not a good year, but we're back. We're here to talk.
We'll move on.
Here to talk small school football, 4A through 1A, and of course, our friends over in 8-man football. And man, I guess the overall landscape before we'll break down classes a little bit. AP polls came out, preseason polls came out this afternoon. So we will go through those and talk about them and probably make fun of them a little bit like I always like to do. I'm kidding. But generally we'll go through what AP is telling us for preseason. Get your thoughts as well. I know there's some key storylines we need to get into. But just your overall thoughts going into this 2023 season. Anything you kind of want to hit on before we start getting rolling here?
Well, I think football is as healthy as it's ever been. I know that's kind of a reoccurring theme that we talk about, maybe to try to sell the game. But, I haven't really heard any negative things about the game of football in terms of health and safety and what have you. If anything, I think there's been more of a focus and electricity on football in general, just with the landscape of football. The NFL is more popular than it's ever been. College football has seen size. What's what I'm trying to say? Crazy shifts in the landscape of football, insane. Which has brought a lot of attention from coast to coast. We have some realignments in our areas that I can talk about a little bit later. But overall, I think that the numbers in football are starting to kind of maybe tick up a little bit in certain communities.
Yeah, I get that too. That is the one thing I've noticed, Matt, since the off season and going into the winter and then into the new year and then leading up to spring, talking to coaches and then once the summer hit, coaches saying, hey, you know what? Our numbers are up. Or at worst case scenario, they've stabilized, and in more cases than not, they're up. And it's great. It's great to hear because let's face it, we were all worried after COVID. I mean, especially the portion of IHSA that we cover with the small enrollments, obviously it's much more devastating the lower the numbers go. But it seems like, again, things have stabilized and and I think eventually, Matt, it comes down to, I think kids get bored. I think parents get bored of watching kids getting bored.
Yeah, sure.
And it's part of the high school experience. It's part of being a kid. And, again, if you're in a big town or a small town, but being part of that community and being part of it, I think got lost. And I think people missed it. And hopefully they're starting to make their way back. And it seems that way.
I think football is exciting for people. I think if you look at college football, let's get right down to it. I mean, college football, and I always kind of come back to college football. I always feel like that's kind of a barometer of kind of what's going on. College football is it's minor league football. I mean, you have NFL, which they're incredible, but then you have college football, which is incredible also. And then they have these turf fields and these fancy uniforms, what have you. Newsflash, you're starting to see that on the high school levels. You're starting everywhere you go at. There's turf softball, there's turf soccer, there's turf baseball, there's turf football. The helmets are nice, the uniforms are nice. So football is an attractive thing. It's an alluring thing still. It's a popular thing. There's a reason why, college game day is still going to keep ticking. And there's a reason why, NBC football, Sunday Night Football is going to be the hottest show in the town. People like the game, and people like Friday Night Football. And you know what? In a couple of days after we get done with this heat wave, it's going to come at us full force. So we're hitting it. 8-man is still going with numbers, and 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. I think the numbers are stabilizing and things are looking good.
It seems like you mentioned 8-man, and we'll continue to get into 8-man, and we'll talk to our coaches and get a better pulse from them on how things are going. But what it seems like 8-man is, so we're hearing about numbers improving and programs adding more kids to their program. But it seems like the 8-man teams, the teams joining 8-man continues to grow. So is that more of a school by school decision, kind of falling out, maybe looking at 3 to 5 years down the road and saying, you know what, the numbers might be going up, but they're not going to go up to the point where it makes sense for us to go back to 11-man right now?
No, I mean, I think they have that option if they want to do that. But, I'm not going to speak for anybody, but I just know my friends and my guys that coach high school football, that coach 8-man, their numbers are decent. And if their numbers go up, it's not like they're jumping to go back into 11-man.
Right.
And I'll just mention one name, Jason Kirby, he won all the marbles last year in 8-man. And, he's replacing some kids, but his numbers are solid. And everybody that I've talked to in terms of just numbers in general in 8-man are good. And that's an option, and I think it's proven. 8-man is proven, like you said, it's kind of fun, it's kind of neat, it's kind of different, it's kind of the wild, wild west. It's solid football, it's safe, and it has now proved itself. And now the IHSA is involved. So I think the future of 8-man is really healthy. And anything that you can do, and this is an academic thing, anything you can do to enrich the academic process, I sound like a scholar there, with sports, hey, go for it. And so 8-man it's flexed its muscles, and it's proven that it's a worthy entity.
Yeah. By the way, if you're playing Matt Leng bingo at home, Jason Kirby's name was mentioned, so drink.
Yeah, there you go. Flex the muscles. I think I said flex the muscles, and I did an arm flex.
There's a whole list that when we hear them, drink. So there you go. All right. So
that's like my Nick Saban Coca-Cola right there. You know what I'm saying? So
since we're venting, yeah, but see, he gets paid a lot of money and he never drinks it or opens it. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
One issue I want to get into, and I think it's unfortunate that we have to get into this, but it's something we have to tackle because it obviously is not going to happen all of a sudden. Matt Leng, what happened to 1 through 32 seating in all 8 classes? Can you tell me? I'm still looking for it and I can't find it.
Well, without throwing anybody underneath the bus, I think we all
throw them.
Hey, here's the deal. You get everybody's opinion on this, and everybody wants to do it, but then the higher ups decide they don't want to do it because we're scared of gas prices. But the bottom line is, I think people still want to do it. They still want to see it happen. They still want to travel. They want something different. They don't want the same old, same old. I don't know if it's ever going to come back. I think it's going to be a while, but it's frustrating because the bottom line is the bottom line. The same people are playing the same people.
That's the argument right there.
When we get to our holy grail, our Saturday night selection, it's the same thing happening.
Yeah, you know who you're going to get. You know who's going to be in your region.
Exactly.
You know who you're going to play in the first round. You know who you're going to play in the second round, even before the pairings come out.
And I think we pushed the panic button. I think we got scared. The committee that makes those decisions decided to do that. It's the easiest thing to predict in terms of human behavior, that when you get scared, you just kind of go into conservative mode. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You could say the same thing. I mean, I'm watching football documentaries right now, old ones from the last 4 or 5 years, and or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, and you see all these people wearing masks. It's like we went through that and we pushed the panic button, and rightfully so. That's different. I understand, but it's like this whole thing with 1 through 32, I hope it comes back because I think it'll just do wonders for this great game that we have in this great state from, Rockford to Carbondale, Quincy to Danville. I think everybody wants to see it.
So the point of this is, why even pass this thing if you weren't sure of it? And then why do you all of a sudden say, well, now wait a minute, we've passed this, but now we're going to go back? I mean, was it a majority of your membership that told you they didn't want this? And if that was the case, again, I don't understand. Can the IHSA do this with any other rule where they can go back and revert and say, well, you know what? No, that those 8 classes of playoff football. No, I think we're going to go back to 5.
Yeah.
Can they do that? I don't know.
Yeah. I think unfortunately, and I'll just throw this in. I think when you come to like scheduling and you come to like games and stuff like that, it's just like, it's the big pink elephant in the room, and it's, like I've asked, we'll talk about this later, like with realignment, we've had conferences that are realigning, even in high school football.
Right.
We'll talk more about that later. It's all about we got to get our games and we got to get our opponents because we've got to play 9 games and we got to get those 5 wins. And I just think when it comes to that scheduling and it comes to that intensity of it, or that emotion or that attachment to it, of the game being played, I just think we just pushed the panic button on that. And that's just my opinion. I just hope it comes back because I'm fairly old enough. I can remember when it was 1 through 32, and it was exciting. It's the travel. And I will tell you this, I think if they did a poll and they did hey, let's do a survey, I think there's a lot of parents and a lot of kids, especially parents, will be like, yeah, we'll budget for that. We're good.
Yeah, I know.
And you know what? I think schools would budget for it too, and I think everybody would be all right. That's my opinion.
Well, and again, the argument is, and we'll get off this in a minute because again, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but the argument being, look, we saw this last year. You are going to have travel no matter what system you have, whether you're doing it by north, south, or whatever. You're going to have, I am literally 1.5 miles south of I-80. Okay. So there's nothing that says that my school doesn't get set down to Cairo to play in the first round of the playoffs, but I'm still within a region, although that's a 300-mile plus one-way drive for me.
Yeah.
It's going to happen regardless of this playoff system you're running.
Yes.
For me and for you, and I think for a lot of others involved in the sport, and especially the schools and the head coaches, it comes down to that playoff question, and it comes down to that, you end up playing the same teams every year, and are you really getting the best possible matchup at stake? No, you're not, because we have examples. I can go into NUIC and bring all that up and show how that conference has basically gotten screwed.
Yeah.
Because they're so good, they get lumped together and then they get to play, the conference elimination. Maybe they can, like the Big Ten, and do their own thing and get national TV and money for the NIT because it's obviously the top tournament in that class. So,
two things I want to add on that is number one, it doesn't seem to be a problem with the summer with AAU volleyball, basketball, softball, and what have you.
No,
everybody's traveling. And number two, I will just say this: in my time that I had at Olympia, our trip down to Benton, Illinois, was incredible, and you could almost say it was an educational experience. And I can guarantee you, when we were going down there, actually the day before we left, I was in a Walmart, and there were people from Geneseo already traveling.
Yeah.
To Walmart in Bloomington to get to Carterville, and they were jacked up. They had never been that far south, and I can guarantee you some of those kids had never been that far south. And I think that is something that is lost and forgotten, and I think hopefully it'll get brought back up someday.
All right, so let's move on. Let's start going through. I've got the AP 1A in front of me. Let's go through it. I'll fill you in on who made it.
Yep.
Who didn't? We'll break down, Matt. Obviously, if you have thoughts about specific teams or the rankings here, fire away. Just let me know. But again, AP preseason 1A polls, we'll go through it. Number 1, Lena Winslow. No surprise, Lena gets the number 1 spot in the preseason poll. 10 first place votes. Camp Point Central, our friend over at Camp Point Central, gets second place. He got 2 first-place votes. Fulton at 3, Forreston at 4, Greenfield Northwest at 5, Tuscola 6. Here's an interesting name in Class 1A, Mr. Leng. Althoff Catholic in 1A is a number 7. We'll get into that in a little bit. Number 8, Anawan Weathersfield. Number 9, Ottawa Marquette. And number 10, Dakota. Matt, there's a whole bunch of others getting votes. Hope Academy was pretty much next in line. St. Bede, Brown County, DMAC, Galena, Aurora Christian. A lot of the usual suspects you would expect in 1A, definitely getting some mentions. But a lot of votes spread out. Sterling Newman, a lot of votes spread out all over the place. So quite a few schools at least got a vote to get in. But again, no surprise, the top of 1A filled with NUIC programs. And not a whole lot of surprise there. Your thoughts?
No, and I think it's heavy with NUIC. I think also, too, I mean, you can kind of see the handwriting on the wall. I mean, it's the same people in 1A and even the teams that are receiving votes because of the fact that we have eroding populations in some towns. Yeah. And some of these schools are now having 8-man, so that's taken away from 1A. So it's basically the same people. I will say this. I think an interesting game in week 1 is Tuscola playing on a neutral playing field. They're going to be playing at Illinois Wesleyan against St. Bede. I think that'll be a really interesting game. Yeah. Tuscola could be a team to watch out for. Obviously, Andy Romine, a very close friend of mine, and he likes his team. He thinks they'll get better every game. Jordan Quinn is the quarterback, 6'2", 210. He was an all-state in basketball last year. And then they have a great middle linebacker in Brady Kane, middle linebacker, senior, 6'2", 200. So Tuscola, I think that first-round matchup will be really, really interesting on Friday.
I mentioned, yeah, by the way, which I think it's great. There's a lot of games that are going to be played in like neutral sites this year. I think more than we've seen in the past. Yeah. Obviously, one of the big ones, week 1, is Saturday night, East St. Louis taking on Mount Carmel at Illinois State. I know that during the year, both Lincoln Way West and Lincoln Way Central are traveling down south. I know that one's playing at Illinois State, the other's playing at Wesleyan. One's on a Friday, one's on a Saturday. So to me, it's great to see. I wish more of the local colleges would do that, would open things up and offer to schools to play in a neutral site, especially when you have the distance between the two. It definitely helps out both schools.
Yeah, well, and again, it kind of goes back to what we were just arguing about before. It's like we're traveling right here.
Right.
People wanting to travel,
So your common sense and you're cutting the distance in half for both, and it makes sense. So,
yeah, so but that's kind of interesting about 1A. I think that'll be an interesting matchup. Tuscola and St. Bede. I really want to see how that goes. That'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. I might have a little bit to say in terms of how each team's going to be.
Hope Academy, again, always on the radar in 1A. From what I've seen this summer, they look like they're going to be pretty good again. And then I mentioned Althoff at number 7, and obviously a power Catholic school down in the St. Louis area, in the Belleville area. Pretty stacked. Couple of key transfers that come in. Jason Dowell, 4-star defensive tackle, was at Cahokia. Now he transferred out over the summer. He's at Althoff Catholic. So look out, pal. Althoff is going to be stacked, and they're in 1A. They could cause a lot of damage in the south part of the bracket. And boy, wouldn't that be interesting to see Althoff come up and maybe take on 1 or 2 of those NUIC schools deep in the playoffs?
That'd be fun, and that'd be interesting. And I tell you what, they're Althoff. I think later in the season, I'm not for sure, they have a game, I think, scheduled with St. Teresa. St. Teresa is now an independent. So that'll be interesting. It's like, who can we play? We need someone to play. Okay. Decatur, Belleville, let's go. Let's work this out.
All right, let's move on to 2A. And the 2A, again, these are the AP 2A preseason polls. St. Teresa, number 1 team, received 6 first-place votes, is the number 1 team in 2A. Maroa Foresight, no surprise, number 2. Also received 3 first-place votes. And then Rockridge at number 3 received 1 first-place vote. The rest, Tri-Valley at 4, Athens at 5, Bismarck, Henning, Rossville, Alvin? I think
Russell Alvin. Yeah, okay. Bismarck, Henning, Russell Alvin.
They also got a 1 their local beat writer voted for them for first place. So they got one voted now as number 6. Number 7, Marian Catholic. Let's clarify that, folks. That is Marian Central Catholic out of Woodstock. That is not Marian Catholic out of Chicago Heights. So little boo-boo there by AP. They need to fix that because that's the difference of about 1,000 kids probably in the school. Yeah. But again, Marian Central Catholic definitely would be a very scary team in 2A. Seneca at 8, of course, the Irish coming off a big season last year. Nashville at 9, Bloomington Central Catholic at 10. And as we mentioned with 1A, 2A, everyone got a vote. It seems like El Paso Gridley, Johnson City, Colfax Ridgeview, Knoxville, Shelbyville, Orion, Pana, Quincy Notre Dame, North Mac, Dwight, on and on and on and on. Bunch of schools there got
is Athens 2A or is Athens 3A?
Athens is 2A in this poll, sir.
Okay.
So, and again, one of those schools that come playoff time could very well swing one way or the other.
Yeah.
But for preseason polling purposes, they're in 2A. Anything jump out at you there?
Well, I mean, you got 2 teams in the Sagamo. You know, I was fortunate enough to work at Olympia, and you know, we'll talk about Olympia here in 3A. But you know, there's going to be 4 teams in the Sagamo that are going to be preseason ranked, and 2 of them are in 2A with Maroa, and Josh has everybody coming back. You know, Ryan Knox has everybody coming back. So that'll be a really interesting kind of how that unfolds. We talk about numbers, you know, just talk to Josh Roop. His numbers are up. It's some of the best he's had and the most he's had. And, you know, they have a middle linebacker named Jacob. Don't call me Eric Bischoff. That was, you know, a little something funny there.
Yeah.
And then Nick Tragat is the quarterback, and he replaces the Knox kid that led them to the state championship game last year. I think it's interesting, too. You know, Britt Miller's the new coach at St. Teresa, takes over for Mark Ramsey, and is going to have a pretty much an independent schedule, a Notre Dame type of schedule.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to be easy. It's not going to be easy at all. He's going to have some real heavy hitters coming at him. So it'll be interesting to see. I think 2A, top to bottom, as always, is just really, really, really loaded.
Yeah.
You look at Shelbyville, you look at Knoxville, you look at Orion. All these teams are going to be getting better as the year goes on, and they'll probably sneak up in the top 10 when it's all set.
One thing we need to talk about a little bit, and you mentioned conference changes and affiliations. One that certainly the non-Chicago area people watching this and obviously following small school football, I think a big development this year is the creation of the Chicagoland Christian Conference.
Okay.
Again, includes schools. We mentioned Marian Central Catholic up in Woodstock. They're in this conference now. They played as an independent last year. Some teams from the Metro Suburban came over. Wheaton Academy is a very good program. Chicago Christian, Bishop Mack, St. Ed's from Elgin. And then obviously joining, as I mentioned, Aurora Christian is in this, Hope Academy, and Christ the King. So it's a pretty interesting collection of schools, and they will tell you kind of all at one point, all kind of like lone wolves wandering the countryside looking for a home. And hopefully they kind of found a home here. And, you know, I think part of the creation of this and the appeal is the fact that, you know, I know that there were schools like Marian Central Catholic a couple of years ago were in the Catholic League, and they were just sized out of the conference. They were just too small for the big fish. And then they were trying to, you know, the league was trying to match these small enrollment schools up with these gigantic, you know, CCL blue teams and crossover playing. It was just kind of a mess. So, well, hopefully this brings some stability, and I think it's going to change the dynamic too, as far as, you know, who these schools are playing. I mean, Marian Central Catholic schedule last year was just ridiculous. I mean, they were playing everyone from like 100 enrollment schools to like a couple thousand, and they were just all over the place. But that's life as an independent, as you will know. I thought it was important to talk about that.
Well, and that's a good segue. And what I want to say is, like, you know, Central Illinois Conference with Clinton High School, A&M, Meridian, Shelbyville, Tuscola, Warrensburg. That's all you have in that conference. And so what they did, they're going to do this next year. They're going to combine with HOIC, and they're going to be having crossover games and whatever. I don't really know how it's going to work, but that's a case in point where we're just trying to provide stability for our kids and
Yep.
for our athletic directors. If you go over to the western side of the state, where I grew up at and had an opportunity to coach at Havana, you have eroding pockets, and if Toby Vallis is on here from Farmington, he would say, there's no reason why Farmington should be playing Havana when we have 300 more kids. So what they're going to do is they're going to have the Prairie Land Conference with Havana and all those teams, Illini West, Farmington, what have you. They're going to be working with the Lincoln Trail Conference. And that's going to be taking place. And that's taking place actually this year. So, again, it's just we're trying to get kids to play teams that their size, so the scheduling nightmare is not a scheduling nightmare.
Well, and it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense on a lot of different levels. You're trying to balance out those schedules and create those opportunities.
Yep.
And let's face it, you're probably going to get some pretty good games out of it. So, and I think your competition level gets better as well. So,
yep.
We see it up here in the northern part in the large enrollments too. There's been a handful of years now, cooperations between the mid-suburban conference and the central suburban conference. They've worked great. I mean, there's been some great games, and schools on both sides will tell you, hey, we're better off for them. It's scheduling easier. It gives them different schools to look at, and it just happens both those conferences are pretty solid and pretty general enrollment-wise, and it works. So,
and again,
great to see them work together.
Down here, like when the Central Illinois and the HOIC combine forces next year, you're going to have some hour and a half, hour 45, maybe 2 hour trips, And I know this year, just another little plug for two of my friends, Toby Vallis. They have to find a non-conference game to play in week 3. So who do you think they're playing? They're playing Tuscola in week 3 at Tuscola, which is going to be a dynamite game, and that's people that don't know where Farmington's at, that's right outside of Peoria.
Who's the head coach? Who's the head coach of that school?
Toby Vallis is the head coach.
Great.
There you go. So it's, these teams are going to travel if they need to travel, and eventually the scheduling will work out. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds now and in the future, because I think as we've seen the blueprint in college, when Stanford and California are going to the ACC, things are getting crazy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we'll move our way up to 3A. So here's the AP 3A top 10 poll, preseason poll. Byron, number 1. It's interesting. One place, first place vote, and they're at number 1. Princeton winds up number 2. They ended up with 5 first place votes, but obviously overall point total wasn't enough, so they're number 2. Number 3 is Williamsville. They got a first place vote. Tolono got they are in 4th. They got 2 first place votes. Wilmington, the Wildcats, are at number 5 with 3 first place votes, followed by number 6, Prairie Central, Montini Catholic, number 7, Stillman Valley at 8, Reed Custer at 9, and Matt Olympia rounds out the top 10. And as far as other votes, the Golden Aces, Mount Carmel getting other votes. Eureka, I've heard a lot about Eureka this summer. A lot of big size up front, and they're supposed to be really good again. Benton getting some votes. Genoa Kingston, Dupec, Monticello, St. Joe, Ogden. So, again, a lot of the usual suspects there. But how about Olympia at number 10?
Well, Eric's a great friend of mine. Had a privilege and honor to coach with him for a year. He's worked really hard, and, he's got a good football team. They're going to be a tough team to prepare for. He runs a true option attack. Chase Litweiler is he's outside linebacker, probably getting looked at by mid-major schools. Nick Olson's a running back. He's got his whole backfield back. Obviously Blaine Talley went to Southern, so they're going to have to replace him up front. But, he's got a good football team, and, they're going to fly around on defense. They're going to be great on offense. And, they've got some tough games in that Sagamo, but I tell you right now, man, you get into week 3 and they're at home against Athens. I think that's going to be a game-changing moment to see who really pops out of that game. As maybe one of the top dogs in the Sagamo, and it doesn't get any easier for Eric. So I think some other games to kind of realize that are really important for our area down here is, I think our thoughts and our prayers still need to go out with Prairie Central. They had some devastating, tragedies that they had to deal with last year. They got a brand new coach. Mike Goodwin is the coach. He brings over 30 years of experience. I know Mike. He's
Yeah.
an absolutely incredible offensive line coach. He was the offensive line coach for Ridgeview last year for Hal Kyoto. And that's going to be a big game. You know, it's Prairie Central at Tolono. You know, Tolono Unity knocked Prairie Central, the undefeated Prairie Central, out of the playoffs last year before they end up getting beat in the semifinals. And, you know, Scott Hamilton does the things he does down there. I kind of call it the cathedral in the country. Tolono Unity has one of the best atmospheres and best facilities you're going to see. Dalton O'Neill, a wide receiver, is real good. And that should be a really, really neat game. You know, and I talked to Jeff up there at Byron. You know, he's got a lot of kids out, and he really likes the makeup of his team. He thinks it's one of the hardest working teams he's had. And, you know, we're going to see how it unfolds. You know, Ryan's got a great team over there at Princeton, and top to bottom 3A. You know, some of my favorite football just because I know a lot of those guys.
Yep.
But, you know, we're going to see how it unfolds.
I had we had our preseason coaches show up here on WJL last week, and Jeff Reams from Wilmington was there. Gavin Johnson from Reed Custer was there. Coach Laughlin from Coal City was there as well. And Wilmington seems to be the real deal this year. They were very young last year, if you remember. Brings a lot of starters back, and Jeff feels good about his team. And Jeff isn't real talky talk when it comes to going into a season. So when he's feeling pretty good, that's a good sign for Wilmington. Reed Custer going to be interesting. They graduated a huge senior class, Matt, a senior class that brought a ton of success, obviously, to that Reed Custer program. So we'll see how that works out for them, and then we'll get into Coal City when we start breaking down 4A. But again, and everyone sees Montini hovering there at number 7, and it's going to be the same story this year that it's been the same story the last several years for Montini. Yes, they could be pretty dangerous here in 3A, but are they going to get enough wins to get into the playoffs? That is going to be the challenge, because they
go through the gauntlet, you know, and it's
had a chance to see them this summer, talent-wise and numbers-wise. They look a bit improved from where they've been the last couple of years, so they're definitely worth keeping an eye on. But you look at the schedule, and in week 1 they'll be okay against Westinghouse. Week 2. Hillcrest is a viable opponent. Then they run into Nazareth Academy, Bennett, Marian Catholic out of Chicago Heights, Providence Catholic, St. Viator, Brother Rice, St. Lawrence. I mean, right. They very easily could wind up the year 3-6. So if you're a 3A fan or wondering about are they going to make it, just keep an eye on it. And again, I wouldn't be shocked either way, whether they end up getting 5 and getting in. If they do, then something to look at, but they got to get
how in terms of the teams up there that you kind of pay attention to, how is the senior leadership on these teams? I know I talked to Jeff Boyer. You know, he had 8 seniors last year. He's got 19 seniors this year.
Yeah.
Probably one of their better football players is, I don't know, a kid by the name of Caden Considine, their running back. But, you know, more times than not, we talk about this as the season goes on. It's that senior leadership that's going to provide, you know, that depth and that experience that wins games. So it'll be interesting to see how Montana with their senior leadership.
It's interesting you mention that, because again, this hasn't been the Montini that people have gotten used to. They've been down a little bit here the last couple of years, and that's pretty rare. So I don't know how high confidence is right now going into the season. So we'll see.
Sure.
But, again, worth noting for sure. All right, we'll go into 4A. We'll break it down, and then once we're done with 4, we'll go and talk a little eight-man football as well. But in 4A, the preseason AP poll, number 1, IC Catholic Prep up in Elmhurst. They are number 1. They received 6 first-place votes. Number 2 is Rochester. Derek Leonard's team gets 3 first-place votes. Number 3, Richmond Burton, also wound up with 2 first-place votes. Then we run the gauntlet of Morris at 4, Boylan Catholic at 5, Wheaton Academy at 6, Carterville at 7, Coal City at 8, Mount Zion at 9, Rochelle at 10. And then as far as the others receiving votes, quite a few: Murfreesboro, Breeze Central, Macomb, Geneseo, Normal, U-High, St. Viator, Effingham, Columbia, Cahokia, Waterloo, Dixon, Plano, St. Lawrence, Jacksonville. So a lot of teams there getting a vote. Just your overall thoughts, sir, on 4A.
Well, I think obviously, kind of cream rises to the top. I mean, you got a lot of these teams that, you got a lot of traditional stories, like a Geneseo who's kind of gotten away from the wing T and kind of established more of a spread power attack. They're still running the ball. And Murfreesboro made a state title appearance a few years ago. Normal U High, maybe a team you might want to watch out for in the Bloomington Normal area. They're battle tested. They've had a great summer. And then, you get into those top teams in the top 10, great programs, great history. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Rochester. That'll be obviously, I think they're kind of chomping at the bit because they haven't been on the turf for a while. And, that'll be interesting. No new coach at Sacred Heart Griffith, so that we won't have a Leonard Bowl, but it's still football in this area is good, and it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Well, and of note, they are moved up. They are success factor to multiplied up into 5A this year.
Yeah.
So in case people were looking for them, that's where they are. Sacred Heart is in 5A. Morris, Richmond Burton, week 6 in Morris.
Yeah.
Showdown. So
what can you say about Coach? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just say, what can you say about Coach Knoll? He continues to do the things he does and runs about 6 plays on offense with his wing T formation, which is just what I like.
Yep.
And they have just proven that they're a tough, hard-nosed team. Richmond Burton obviously had a lot of success and been to the state title game a couple times in the last 3 or 4 years.
And again, another game up my way. And again, that's week 1. Morris and Coal City, 2 ranked teams, go at it week 1. And as I've told you, Matt, that is a rivalry game that, I think last year was kind of a one-way game, and there's a big discrepancy in enrollment. Not as much as it used to be, but both communities want this game. I mean, they do not. They want to keep playing this for a long time. They know each other. They're rivals. You talk to both sides. You talk to both sides of this, and they're like, "Hey, they don't care what happens. Yeah. They want to play this game every year," which is great.
That's something that I would just like to do a little bit more. I'd like to kind of study some of these trophy games. We haven't really done that too much, but I will just say this. I will say this. There's a lot of great games around the Champaign area. Over in the Westville, Georgetown area, they play for the Cola Bucket.
Start with that.
What's that?
You start with the Cola Wars.
The Cola Wars, and unfortunately, that's going to be on hold because they can't play each other anymore because they're in different conferences. But there's all sorts of games. Fisher just recently here in the last 7 or 8 years added a Route 136 game with Hayworth.
Cool.
I think anything you can add to electricity and just attractiveness for football where it means something to communities, it just means a lot, and I think it's great. So I'd like to kind of do a little bit more research on that sometime, and we talk about that, but that's good for high school football.
I'm interested in 4A to see how the Southern Illinois teams wind up faring this year. I had a chance to see quite a few of those guys this summer. Carterville looked great to me, Matt. Carterville's got some talent. He's got some, I had a nice talk with the coach and said, one thing for certain, your kids know where the weight room is. I mean, that was a big, strong physical group from Carterville. Yeah. Played at the coach's 7-on-7 tournament and really impressive. So they're going to be really tough this year. And then obviously I saw Mount Zion there as well. And Mount Zion has a really good group of skills. So just real interested to see how far those teams can advance this year. I think they're both going to be pretty tough.
Well, Patrick does a great job at Mount Zion. He's got a proven track record, and that's south. But when you get real south, when you get Carterville, you get Murfreesboro, Carbondale, and you get way down there, I mean, there's good football. I'm not a historian by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been at enough state championship games where about Harrisburg, about about DeCoin, and you about their county fair, and you know how important it is. I'm talking to you. You went to SIU. I mean, there's good, solid football, and there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride down there, and So that's going to be another storyline to kind of investigate and do some research on my part. I will do it. I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you.
Oh, whatever. It's fine. I definitely will help out as well. And you know what? Hey, I've got message boards. I got Twitters. We need to ask questions. We'll ask it. We'll get help from people.
Well, we're going to try to cover the state. And I was just being facetious there, but like, I want to reach out to these guys because, the Coin and the Harrisburgs and all these schools down there, they love their football. They love their sports, and so we'll have to kind of do a little bit more research on that too.
Speaking of that, and we're going to get into 8-man here in a minute, and we'll finish with 8-man, but I'm going to make a trip. I am still planning on making a trip this coming season. It is to a school that I have not been to in many years. Been there once, long time ago. It is a historic, legendary home field, and it is not very close to where I live. And I'm going to make that trip happen this year.
But you're not going to tell us right now.
I will tell you the week before I get ready because I got to get everything set up. You know how that is.
Okay.
But it'll be fun. And I think I'll have some pretty good stories to bring back. As you mentioned, leading into getting into a little bit more history. This school's got a lot of history. It's got a lot of neat things about it, and definitely looking forward to experience it again. So we'll talk about that as we move on during the
I plan on doing a little bit of the same thing. I'm doing a little bit of more personal and professional stuff in my life, and I'm going to be kind of watching my daughter play volleyball. And one of the things I like to do with my son is take him to some places. I'm thinking about just going up the road and watching Clifton Central at Bismarck Henning and their brand new turf field. So I think anytime you have a chance to go see places you haven't seen in a while and see their traditions, I think it's great. So I think that the masses are waiting to hear of the EDGYTIM trip, because I've experienced an EDGYTIM trip when you came to Fisher to watch me coach football. So
you didn't think I'd make it. I
didn't think you'd make it, and you got there.
I'll make it, believe me. All right, let's get into 8-man. For 8-man purposes, we are going to use our friends at NUIC Football, use their 8-man rankings. Again, go support those guys. They do a tremendous job at their coverage, did a great job, all kinds of team previews out on Twitter, all kinds of stuff. And then also shout out to our friends at View from the West. Had a chance to join them on their preseason podcast, had a lot of fun.
They said some nice things about our podcast.
They did, and they didn't even make fun of you either, which I was really happy about. I didn't have to defend you. So, but no, they're great guys.
Hopefully, we've inspired and motivated them a little bit. They have a nice thing going. I really appreciate
They do.
that.
They do a really, really good professional job, much more professional than what we do. So, but they're fantastic. So we appreciate them. But again, we're going to use NUIC Football's 8-man rankings again this year. So here we go. Number 1, Amboy. Number 2, Polo. Number 3, Milledgeville. Number 4, St. Thomas More. Number 5, Ridgewood. Number 6, West Central. Number 7, Unity Christian. Number 8, Milford Cissna Park. Number 9, Pawnee. I'm going to guess that's in Southern Illinois, Matt. And number 10, Hiawatha. And then also receiving votes, West Prairie and South Beloit. Anything jump out at you in the 8-man ranking?
Well, just from my sources and people I talk to, I have to reach out and ask and what have you. Obviously, Amboy is going to be a very, very tough team. Milledgeville's right up there.
Yep.
I think Polo with Ted and what he does over there is always going to be a solid, productive outfit. I think STM is a team to watch out for. Here's a team that has everybody coming back. Peace Bumba is there. Obviously, their bell cow.
He back? Wow.
He is back.
Wow.
And I didn't think he
have a huge year.
And I just saw that the other night on television. There you go, folks. There's my source. And so they're going to be loaded. They don't have a quarterback. They've bring everybody back except for the quarterback.
Put Peace in the shotgun and just let him go.
I think there's a possibility he may do that. I think Pat Elder over at Ridgewood has a team that can make a run. So all those teams that I'm talking about right there, they're going to be good. But don't let Jason Kirby fool you. He's got a lot of there you go, drink. He's got a lot of Lou Holtz in him. And when I say that, he'll act like the cupboard's bare. If you don't know Jason Kirby, he's one heck of a football coach. He's got a great mind, and they'll have something to say about it. You're out of drink. You're out of drink.
I'm out. I'm empty.
8-man will be very interesting. Clint Schwartz down at Milford has a great system. And it's just going to be really interesting to see how this works. Maybe a dark horse team is Farmer City, D-Land Weldon over there by the Champaign area. And they continue to fight and scrap. They were not ever really able to really have a successful 11-man for years when I was at Fisher just because of the numbers. But 8-man, they've held their own. So I think that's the productivity, and that's the positive of 8-man. So it's going to be interesting.
We need to get Jason or someone on in the next few weeks. It doesn't have to be next week, but in the next few weeks, I want to talk about expansion.
Yep.
Where are the new teams coming from? And then the question that we ask each other, and again, every year we're going to throw at the 8-man guys, how much longer until IHSA brings them in?
Sure.
I think it's coming soon.
And I will just say this, we both obviously were tied down. We got things that we were doing, and we weren't able to be there last year at that state championship game. And it was cold. It was blustery. And like you said, you say it the best. Here you go. You don't have anything to drink, but here's the edgy Timism. It's the wild, wild west. And They do it how they do it.
Yep.
And
Great.
You ask anybody that goes over there, they say it's off the charts electricity, Richter scale, 9.5. It's a phenomenal atmosphere.
Yep. I feel good about myself. I watched a documentary on Texas 8-man. Is it 6-man? Texas 6-man.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah, definitely. So again, looking forward to trying to embrace the 8-man guys. And I don't want to talk up going to the state title game this year, but I have something in my schedule around that time that might allow me to get that done. So
there you go.
I will plot and scheme over the next several weeks.
So we do need to talk to those guys because I think the game is alive and well, and it's proven it's flexed.
Yeah.
Another Matt Lang, it's flexed his muscles. They've proven that they can do it. The proof's in the pudding. And so kudos to all the teams that are doing that.
All right, next week game. So we'll have plenty of stuff to talk about after week 1. You know where you're going or no?
I'm probably going to take my son down to Bismarck-Henning, watch Bismarck-Henning and Clifton Central.
Awesome.
2 teams out of the Vermilion, 2 Hall of Fame coaches, and Mark Dodd. Dodd's son, Dylan Dodd, pitches for the Atlanta Braves.
Awesome.
So they had some really good teams over the last 5 years with Dylan Dodd. What can you say? Clifton Central and Brian Spooner, Hall of Fame coach. I think that'll be a really, really good game. So that's what I plan on doing. And unless I get kind of convinced maybe to go over to Illinois Wesleyan and watch my best friend Andy Romine coach over there against St. B. But I think I'm going to make the trip over to Bismarck-Henning.
Sounds good.
Where are you going?
Well, I'm doing Brother Ice at Maine South Friday night, which again is 2 really good teams, 2 really good offenses, and should be a good game in kind of 7A, 8A realm. Well, a game that was supposed to be played Thursday night that got pushed back to Saturday because of the weather was Lincoln Way East and Kenwood Academy. That game's at Saturday morning at 10 a.m. now, so guess who's going to go cover it? So I'm going to do that. Yeah. Then I'm going down to Illinois State Saturday night to cover East St. Louis and Mount Carmel. So,
well, I will just say this. Normal U-High was practicing in the inside bubble today, the air-conditioned inside bubble right next to Illinois State.
Yep.
I drove by there the other day, and I'm just telling you, we'll talk about this later. I cannot wait to see that place packed for state championship football. I think it's going to be amazing. We'll talk about that later.
That's why I'm excited about this game, because I would be very surprised. Now again, I don't want to get into too much of this, but I think they're going to draw a really good crowd on Saturday. There's been a lot of buzz about this game all summer long. And I just think everything's going to fall in line. Number one, the weather's supposed to cool off by Friday and Friday morning going into the afternoon. Saturday, they're talking like mid-70s in Bloomington by game time, which is perfect. So if the weather's that nice, I'd be shocked if they don't draw a big crowd. And again, I think it's just a great primer to get everyone back to Illinois State and to say, hey, okay, look, this is exactly what this thing's about. and give people a taste of what they can expect when they go back for the state finals. So
yeah, and the students are back too. So you might have a little overflow from students. Might walk in, hey, what's going on? Well, it's a high school football game. It's just neat. I'm telling you right now.
I've been to some great high school football games at Illinois State. A lot of them have been the Twin Cities Classic that they played down there. I saw some normal community Bloomington games that were just 8, 9, 10,000 in the stands. Commonplace.
No, it's
and the other one that does that, it's going on this week as well, is Sycamore and DeKalb plays at NIU. Man, it's crazy. They draw like 8,000, 9,000 every year for that game. So gotta love that.
Once again, it just proves our point that football is healthy. People like to be outside. They like to watch the game. We don't have a pandemic that we're dealing with. We're back to some sort of normalcy, and now it's here. It's here, and it's ready to rock and roll. And you and I will try to make some sense out of it.
We'll do our best. All right, for Matt Leng, I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll be back next week. And bring something to drink next week, and I'll have the bingo card going, so we'll have it all set for you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.